I am Roger Hall, the Deputy Consumer Advocate here at the department and the Director of the Advocacy Division. I'm glad to be here today to talk to you a little bit about what we do in the Advocacy Division. Maybe I should go ahead and say this, if you're not familiar with rulemaking. Rulemaking really means regulation, how regulations are passed and our process for commenting on those proposed regulations. We will, of course, cover the comments that we've submitted this past fiscal year and try to give you some tips to help protect yourselves. So a little bit of just about the general rulemaking process. This is really the overview of the federal process. The state process is very similar, but there's some different language used. The comment letters I'm going to be discussing today are all related to federal agencies, so that's why I'm kind of focusing on that here. But again, so the first step is the agency that needs to identify an issue that needs to be addressed. Internally, they're looking at the scope of what the issue is, identifying needs and costs. Once they have decided, yes, we need to make a change, and this could be a new regulation, it could be amending an existing regulation, or it could be repealing a regulation. But once they've made that decision, they will submit what's called a notice of proposed rulemaking or an advance notice of proposed rulemaking. The advance is typically just saying, we're thinking about doing this, we're seeking information, just kind of, let people become aware of it. A notice of proposed rulemaking typically will have language that they're proposing, so some specific changes to an existing regulation or the things that they want to repeal. And then we will seek public comments on that. And then once they ultimately go back internally, make a decision, that will be published in the Federal Register, and it'll include the implementation date, and it will also typically address the comments received from the public or other agencies like ourselves. This is, if you're interested, the Federal Register website and the statehouse.gov website for the state register covers an array of different agencies and issues. Here you see on the left, these are the typical federal agencies we look at just because they are most often related to issues that the Department of Consumer Affairs deals with. On the right are the state agencies, same thing, the ones that we typically look at. We will look at more than these, but these are just kind of the common ones that we focus on. Kind of interesting, the amount of things, especially on the Federal Register, you'll see anything from the Coast Guard post about, there's a recent one that our paralegal was telling me about. Someone was having a wedding, I believe it was in New York, and they were going to apparently have a big fireworks display. And because of that, their Coast Guard had to implement certain provisions and things related to, I guess, the safety of the fireworks show, and that was on the Federal Register for you to see and comment on. Drug Enforcement Agency will put out things about different medications, all kinds of things that maybe you didn't know that the government was telling us about, but they're trying to be transparent. So if you go to that website, you can see lots of interesting things. This is a list of all the comments that we have submitted since 2017. There you can see we're on our website if you're interested in things from beyond 2021. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today, but here's a list of everything that we have done since 2017. So in, again, fiscal year 21 to 22, the department submitted 7 comment letters. I'm going to discuss each of these briefly, but here's if you want to go back, I'll have a copy of this presentation. You can go back and read the full letters if you'd like. For each of these, I'm going to try to explain the issue, the reason that the agencies put out the notice of proposed rulemaking to begin with, give you an overview of the comments that we submitted, and then try to offer tips for you to protect yourselves as consumers. So the first one letter I'm going to talk about has to do with junk fees. This was put out by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau or the CFPB. If you haven't heard the term junk fees, it is basically any hidden or excessive fees that consumers are not aware of. A couple examples here: banks, late penalties, overdraft or out-of-network ATM fees. For your mortgage, oftentimes there are convenience fees if you pay over the phone that a lot of consumers may not be aware of, and of course, late fees there. Car dealers, big one we'll talk a little bit more about later on, and an issue we've been dealing with lately. market adjustment fees, add-ons for security systems, inspections and processing fees. Just a few examples of various junk fees that are out there. So you ask maybe why is it important to comment about junk fees? Why was the CFPB looking into this issue to begin with? Several issues right here. One, sort of a bait and switch. You will see where a customer might get lured into a business based on advertisements. And then when they go to purchase a product, junk fees are added. All of a sudden, the price is a lot higher than they anticipated. Second one, it can be unfair to businesses that don't use them. When the actual full price is not displayed, it's not subject to the competitive process. So we do feel that other businesses then don't know how to price their products accordingly. They feel like maybe they have to lower their prices when ultimately another business is adding fees in the end. And this is big money. Here you see bank overdraft fees. There was a total of $15.4 billion in overdraft and non-sufficient fund fees collected by banks in 2019. That compares to $1 billion in their maintenance fees, annual maintenance fees. So you see that's over 15 times as much in just 1 year alone. Very similar with credit card issuers. $23.6 billion in fees in 2019, and $14 billion of those were from late fees. So what we did for our comment letter was to submit our various interpretations that we've had over the years. We also pointed out the increase that we saw of junk fees coming up during COVID. We stressed our recent concerns regarding motor vehicle dealer practices. All of those letters are available through these links. And one I wanted to point out right now that the FTC has out that you all can, comment period is open right now, is that they are seeking comments on auto dealers and junk fees and bait and switch practices. There's a September 12th, 2022 deadline. So you've got about a month and a half or so. If you'd like to comment on that, you can go to those links, read the notice of proposed rulemaking, or these are actually requests for comments, and provide your input. So like I said, I wanted to cover some tips for you, so to protect yourselves from junk fees. Some things we recommend: first, find out what fees they're going to charge. Talk to the business ahead of time. Ask them if their advertised price is the full price or if there are other fees. If there's a contract involved, read that contract. If you were talking to a salesperson, does that contract include the verbal promises that were made to you? Are there any fees you don't recognize? Make sure you get all this information. If you have a written contract, maybe consult with someone else that you trust before you sign it, get some feedback from others that might be able to help you understand the issues. And verify the cancellation policy, very important. What do you need to do to opt out? Are there any fees associated with canceling? So the second comment letter we did was also with the CFPB. It was about buy now, pay later programs. Something I actually had not ever heard this phrase. One of our paralegals here is a little bit younger than I am, was very familiar with these. It is basically the new version of layaway. Essentially, you'll get a product immediately, but along with the debt, they typically want you to make first of 4 payments at the point of sale, whether that's online, and you also see these in stores on the credit card machines occasionally. They set up a payment plan, typically drawn every 2 weeks. It can be drawn on a credit card. So that creates issues there. And customers typically do not pay any fees or interest, but only if they make the payments on time. And if you don't make them on time, of course, there will be late fees involved and could potentially have some interest as well. So if I can get to the next screen, this is a few that you may have seen there in the middle, the different companies that are involved with buy now, pay later options, which you might see if you were online or if you're using Apple Pay. Most transactions will pop up that screen. But with this being said, I wanted to see, because I wasn't familiar with it, we have a poll question to see how many of you all are familiar with it. So I think Bailey can bring that up now. Just asking, have you ever?
Okay, I just launched it.
Yeah, have you ever used a buy now, pay later option? So if you answer yes or no, we'll give a few seconds for folks to answer and kind of see how familiar you are with it.
Can you see that, Roger?
It's kind of small. If you can read from my seat, it looks like it's about
yeah,
even.
Okay, so 43% of people said yes, they've used a buy now, pay later option, and then 57% of people said no.
Okay, so yeah, about half. So it seems to be becoming more and more common. So we'll try to tell you a little bit more about them so you can kind of understand, things to know about it before you agree to do it. Our comment letter did note that the department does consider these transactions to be consumer loans under the law. Again, kind of a new thing to a lot of us. So we had very limited data regarding complaints related to them. Again, I feel like as this becomes more and more prevalent, we'll probably start seeing more complaints. But here's some things to know about it. A third of those customers who use them have fallen behind on one or more payments, and 72% of those said their credit score declined. So again, very, very easy to say, I don't have to pay for it all now, but if you're not budgeting appropriately, it's easy to get behind. Again, some may have no interest, but they most do charge late fees. And returning an item can get more complicated if you purchase through a BNPL. Some of these require you to make all the payments before you can return the product. Doesn't make sense, but I guess that's the terms that they thought were best for their business. So kind of covered a couple of these before, but some tips about layaway and these buy now, pay later programs. Know the payment terms. Make sure you understand when they're due, how much you have to pay, what's going to happen if you miss a payment, and keep records. It's always good to, especially with everything online, we feel like everything's digital and should be known to these companies, but keep a record of your payments. So if there ever is a dispute that you didn't make them all, you can provide that proof. Next topics get a little bit more technical, so I'm going to try to do my best to explain some of these. Cell phone SIM swapping and port out fraud. These were requests for comments from the Federal Communications Commission. These are actually two methods that are used by scammers to take control of your cell phone. You see it there, but SIM swapping is when the scammer convinces your wireless carrier to transfer your service to their phone. Port out fraud is similar, but is when the scammer poses as you to open an account with a carrier that's not yours, and then transfers or ports out your number to a new account. What this allows them to do is essentially take control of your phone. Any private text or calls that come in, they'll have access to. And what they'll try to do is try to reset all your access credentials to financial and social media accounts before you find out. So it's kind of a race for them to get access to these before you figure out your phone's not working how it's supposed to. Once they have access, they can either try to drain your bank accounts, or oftentimes you'll see some ransom to get back your phone. The FCC had proposed some changes to try to prevent this. They want, obviously, telecommunications carriers to take some steps to protect unauthorized access. And one of those was to only disclose information over the phone if the customer first provides their password. Our comment letter informed the FCC that we are aware of these issues, that we supported their proposals, and we actually had some real world examples of this. We had a consumer who had reported to us that could no longer access her financial accounts through her phone. After gathering some information, figured out that a scammer had gained access through, I don't recall if this was SIM swapping or port out fraud, but we're able to withdraw $2,000 from her account. And we just, we let the FCC know about this issue and, point out that if there had been these additional authentication measures in place, then this could have been prevented. So like I said, these are going to get a little technical here. VoIP and spam calls. VoIP is a voice over internet protocol. It is basically anything, any type of call that's being made that's not over traditional telephone wires. We are, if you're using your computer to hear what I'm saying today, and I'm speaking of this is through VoIP. Your cell phones are voice over internet protocol. This is something that's really grown, really increased scams a lot recently because there's so much software out there that these scammers don't have to have a lot of technical experience. It's fairly cheap to do. So that's why we're seeing a lot of these robocalls and different things that just seem to be more and more prevalent. I know I get several a day. See there at the bottom, 77 billion unwanted calls received by U.S. consumers in 2020 alone, which is actually a 28% drop from 2019. We're hoping maybe that some of the things I'm going to talk about here on the next few slides might be slowing those down, but again, 77 billion unwanted calls in 2020 alone. So one of the things that let me back up a little bit here, that the Federal Communications Commission has done is implemented this thing called STIR Shaken. It is it's actually an acronym. I'll tell you how to slide with it on there. It's a little technical, but I'll go ahead and tell you it's the Secure Telephone Identity Revisited, STIR, and Shaken is signature-based handling of asserted information using tokens. Essentially what this is a way for the various wireless and VoIP carriers to authenticate calls that are being made and received. It was developed by the telecommunications industry and implemented by the FCC. Larger companies had to implement this in 2019 and 2020, and now through this comment process, smaller service providers must implement it by June 30th, 2022. That is a full year and earlier than originally proposed, and so that's part of this comment period, and these letters led them to make the decision to require this technology to be implemented a year earlier. Essentially what it is when you make an outbound call, it goes through the they call it VSP, it's the VoIP service provider, through an authentication service before it goes out to whoever you're calling or the terminating provider, who then also goes through a verification service, and they have certificates attached to these to verify that it's a legitimate call. So again, they're hoping that these programs, STIR Shaken, will help reduce some of these before you receive a call. So what's yet to be seen if it'll work. We did receive over 3,000 reports. These are just reports to DCA about scam calls in 2021. The numbers had seemed to actually decline somewhat at the beginning of COVID, but then increased. So we were hoping maybe that these STIR Shaken and other mechanisms would reduce the numbers, but they're starting to creep back up. And this slide is to show that these have real world consequences. Again, and keep in mind, these are only what's been reported to DCA. And we assume that a lot of things don't get reported and there's money being lost. So what this shows are through 2018 through 2021, and actually these 2021 numbers are only through September. I can kind of give you an update, but didn't have a chance to update the bar graph here. What it shows are actual losses and potential. Actual losses are those that, again, a consumer did pay out to a scammer based on, these are again based only on calls to them. Potential are the money that was requested, but the consumer ultimately didn't pay. So what you'll see is for September, well, let's start back with 2019. Our identity theft unit reported $432,670 in actual losses. However, by 2021, that number was up to almost $600,000. I mean, sorry, in 2020, up to almost $600,000. And for 2021, again, not reflected on this chart, but we reported $1.98 million in actual losses. That was somewhat inflated by one particular scam that was reported where someone lost $1 million last November in a lottery-related scam. That 2021 potential number ended up at $418,000. So real money for South Carolina consumers. The average, I believe, per consumer, and again, that $1 million lottery scam brings it up a little bit, was roughly $2,000 per consumer. So just again, a few tips about robocalls. First one, hang up the phone, call your bank, etc. Whoever's calling, using a number that you know is legitimate. Don't press 1 to speak to a live operator. Don't press any other numbers. Get off the phone. If you do, that's going to let them know that this is a real number, and you're just likely to get more robocalls. Second thing to remember, no one's going to call you asking for your private information. Scammers will often pose as government agencies to gain your trust. So look out for messages from those types of agencies and businesses. They'll try to get you to verify your information, like your bank account or social security number or credit card transaction. Those are not normal government practices. No one's going to call you to ask you to verify that type of information. And look out for unusual forms of payment requests. You'll see gift cards, prepaid debit cards. No legitimate business or agency is going to ask for that type of payment. And finally, please report the call to us. They help us stay informed of the latest schemes, help us warn South Carolina consumers. So we've got the information here to report a scam call. You can call it, or you can go to a website. And again, like I showed you at the beginning, that drop down in the middle of our homepage. Another comment letter that we were involved in was again from the FCC, and this was about disclosure of internet service charges and fees. Having full disclosure of information, relevant information to consumers is something that we strive to have, whether it's a state or federal agency communications, to make sure consumers are making well-informed decisions. So essentially what the FCC proposed was so this is actually, I think it was back from, let me see if I have it in my notes, 2016, these labels were proposed. As you can see, they look a lot like nutrition labels. The FCC proposed using these at the point of sale. So when you go, if you're getting internet services, you'll understand not only how much this is going to cost you, what are the speeds involved, what might change your prices if you go over your data limits, for example. How are they going to use the data they collect from you, explanations of technical language. So these are the types of comments we made. And in addition, just to increasing white space, increasing font size to make sure they're easy to understand. Let's see, I think this might be the last one we're going to talk about here, the Social Security Administration. This is interesting. I'll kind of show the interplay between different agencies. So the Social Security Administration put out this request for information based on FTC reports that Social Security related phone scams are the most common type of government imposter fraud. And what, for the Social Security Administration, how it really came in is that they recognize that when people are scammed, they often will take money out of retirement accounts or stocks and things like that, that then it impacts their adjusted gross incomes. And so all of a sudden, you don't have tax exempt funds or things like that, and you may actually owe more in Medicare. So it's kind of an interesting mixing there. But what they wanted to know about was only just the forms of fraudulent activity that are out there, so they can understand how to assist victims and prevent it from happening. So what the DCA did is we just sent them our scam report data. This is from our most recent scam reports, just showing the top 3 categories. One being purchases, related most often to a product that you buy online that you never get. Service and repair scams are number 2. Fake credit repair companies in general, and internet services as well. And then the third most popular, or most prevalent rather, was crime warrants, where a scammer tells you there's a warrant out for your arrest and you need to pay them money, or oftentimes they'll try to get your social security number from that as well. Here's just showing the breakdown of that, the crime, all roughly similar, but 16% for crime warrants, 16% for service repairs, and 18% for purchases. So if you've seen any of our presentations before, you've probably seen this, but what to look out for scams, look out for the red flags. Again, somebody asks you to identify or confirm your personal information. People look out for people posing as law enforcement officers, threats of arrest, again, asking you to make payments in unusual ways. And the bottom line there, you see at the bottom, if you're answering a cold call or any communication that comes out of the blue, never give information to the person. And when in doubt, hang up and follow up using a number you know is legitimate. So again, like I said, that's a lot of information. I would hear finally, I'm sorry, I think you've been a victim, call SCDCA. Again, I know that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. Hopefully you found it useful. Appreciate everyone coming in, and hopefully you learned something new and learned how you can be a part of these processes. So thank you.